Hello, bonjour and welcome to a new wine video. I'm your host, Julien Miquel, and today I thought we would be doing things a little bit differently. I am going to be tasting 3 different wines from 3 different European classic wine regions. Those are 3 different red wines in fact. But the twist is that I am going to be tasting them blind, meaning I don't know which wine is which. What I do know though is that here we've got a wine from Rioja, the most famous, iconic of all Spanish wine regions. We have a wine from Chianti Classico, the heart of Tuscany in the center of Italy, obviously. And we have a wine from the whole famous Bordeaux wine region of France. So I've asked my partner to wrap these bottles up into some foil and into some paper so I really can't recognize any traits from the bottle, and to number them so we sort of can track these different wines. What I do know though is that these wines are in a range between $20 and $25, and I've seen the brands of these wines because I ordered these wines, but I've never tried these wines. I chose this price range category because I find that it is a nice way to have wines that are relatively typical from their appellation, especially if you target wineries that are relatively large and popular and broadly distributed around the globe, because they are going to be trying to emulate the typical style that is found in their own region. If you go a little bit cheaper, you are likely to find wines that are not that good essentially, and therefore not representative of the typical archetypical style that you can find in a region. If you go much higher in price, of course some wines are going to be really good and typical of the area of origin, but some wines you may end up in wines that are a bit more of a specialty wines or more single vineyards that may be slightly different or slightly off the typical archetypical style that you can find in widely popular and distributed brands. So all these 3 wines in principle are available all around the globe, so you can find them. It was also for me a way to show you that you can simply, on a relatively modest budget, set up a blind tasting and invite a few of your friends and have fun discussing the wines. It's always really interesting. It's always a good way to go really deep into your understanding and your analyzing, your tasting of a wine if you go blind, because you go without preconceived ideas of what to expect. But let's dig into these 3 different wines, and this is going to be hopefully a good opportunity to discuss the style and the expected style of these 3 different classic European wine regions. I guess a lot of us have tasted some of those, but what should you expect from a good Rioja, a good Chianti, or a good, well-made, affordable Bordeaux wine? Let's find out if I can match and recognize all these 3 wines. So I'm going to go through these 3 wines and then I'm going to give you what I find about them, how I like them. I am probably going to score them as well and give you some of the traits that I find, and then I'm going to reveal my guess on which one I think comes from where, and hopefully I can do this well, and if I'm mistaken, well, we shall see. Anyway, let's start with wine number 1. So these 3 wines come in a Bordeaux shaped bottle, so really there's no way to tell. Sometimes you might have wines that come in more of a round shaped bottle or Alsace bottle, which may give clues, so you might have to use paper bags or other ways to fold them and blind the tasting if the bottles are shaped different ways. But these 3 are classic Bordeaux sort of shaped bottles, so really there's no way to tell which one is which. So let's start with wine number 1. And first thing, when you're tasting, you do want to look at the color. So Chianti, Rioja and Bordeaux are not expected to be that different in color, but I can see that this red wine is relatively evolved in its color. There is a nice red, bright red core, but there is a bit of orange rim, orange hues to the rim, so that's the side of the glass, meaning this is probably a wine with a little bit of evolution, maybe a little bit of oak. We shall see by smelling the wine. So yeah, first smell, and let me swirl this glass, which helps revealing and evaporating all the goodness out of the glass, and smell all the components better and the nuances better. So there's certainly some bright fresh raspberry type of red crisp fresh wood berry characters to this wine, so it smells relatively fresh and vibrant, which leads me a little bit more towards the Chianti, but we can discuss the different styles and what to expect. But I am also getting quite a lot of spices, quite a lot of vanilla, which tells me that there is probably quite a lot of oak. So oak comes through as caramel, as vanilla, maybe sometimes a little bit of coconut, a bit of a bourbon-like type of smell, and I'm definitely getting quite a lot of bourbon-like vanilla, French vanilla types of smell out of this, together with the dark spices such as clove. There's a bit of licorice, so that leads me toward quite a lot of oak, but let's confirm that with the palate. So here we've got a relatively good acidity, not really sharp an acidity, but there is a good acidity, a nice, smooth and relatively dense body, not hugely dense. There is definitely some ripe plum. This is quite a warm wine, it feels quite warm, and there's a big explosion of these dark spices on the palate, which definitely reminds me of a wine that would have gone through quite a lot of oak, which makes me think at this point that we are probably dealing with the Rioja wine. A lot of the Rioja wines, one of the characteristics of Rioja, despite or beyond being made from a Tempranillo, the typical Spanish grape, especially in Rioja, which is a grape that gives quite a lot of acidity and some vibrant fruit, together with, depending on the climate and the terroir, also gives some warmth and some more plummy, pruny and warming alcohol characters as well, which I can all find in there. But the real trait, signature trait from Rioja is the long aging in oak barrels, and especially American oak barrels. And American oak barrels definitely give this more bourbon, like bourbon whiskey type of characteristics to a wine, and I'm finding quite a lot here, so I'm definitely headed towards the Rioja wine here. But this is a salivating, dry, good balanced acidity and ripeness of the fruit, which also corresponds somehow to Rioja, which is on a limestone terroir. It's a warm appellation, a warm region, but the soil and the terroir can be limestoney as well, so relatively cool, so some acidity and some freshness in the fruit comes through as well. So kind of all the elements are put and combined and come together to make me think that wine number one may well be a Rioja wine, but I'll keep this for myself for now, just pretend you haven't heard it, and let's dig into the other wine so I can sort of change my mind on the go. And you know, if I change my mind, I'll tell you why, so it's always good and interesting. So wine number two, let's see what this little baby has to tell us. Okay, so we're having a little bit of a brighter, more red color, as I was saying before, so that leads me towards less oak. Perhaps there should always be less oak in any of the Bordeaux or the Chianti than there would be in Rioja. So definitely much more vibrant, less dark spices, less vanilla, much more brighter red berry fruit. There's some raspberry in there, some wood strawberries. There's a bit of a fennel vegetal aspect and trait to the nose as well. Quite a lot of dark cherry as well, so from just the nose I can't really quite tell which one this would be. Okay, so this is also a dry red wine, relatively dense, although a little bit watery as well. I guess we're not in the very high-end, really dense wines here in any of those anyway. Smooth tannins. There is a bit of a signature vegetal character that I identify, that is often identified as bell pepper, green bell pepper or green capsicum in there, which is a bit of a signature trait from the Bordeaux wines. Bordeaux is relatively cool for the grape varieties that it grows, a cool climate that is. So the Cabernet Sauvignons and the Merlots, depending on the vintage, may get just ripe in Bordeaux, which makes the quality of Bordeaux, but also sometimes in some vintages makes it difficult for growers to produce excellent, ripe and rich, opulent wines. So there is a bit of this green capsicum trait. There is definitely a lot of a dark black cherry character to it, which is quite a bit of a signature to Merlot. The mouthfeel feels round and soft and smooth, which also leads me toward more the Merlot type of wine. So I'm leaning towards the Bordeaux wine here. I can't feel much oak into this wine, maybe a little bit of vanilla, maybe touches of delicate French oak, well integrated oak. So maybe that confirms a little bit the French signature style to wine number 2. But let's dig into wine number 3 and see what it's got to say, and if that tastes like a Chianti, then I will have my match. But if it doesn't taste like a Chianti, well, I have to rethink my whole guessing game here. So we have a nice, vibrant, relatively dark red color, not much signs of evolution here, slightly orange to the rim, but this feels and looks like a vibrant, bright red wine. There is some bright, also juicy red berry characters to the nose. It is quite ripe though when I swirl the wine, or a bit of a plum and a bit of ripe plum. Dark plum comes through. There's a bit of the sour cherry, tart cherry that comes through as well, together with a bit of a phenol and a bit of an anisey trait and character to this. So this is a very pleasant, fruity, exuberant, aromatic profile. You just certainly want to dig into this wine because it gives you so much fruity satisfaction just as smelling it. It's actually really enjoyable, and that's always a good sign when the nose is enjoyable. But let's see if the palate confirms that I like this wine. Wow, okay, so this is a round bodied wine. There's definitely a lot of oaky character that comes through into this wine. There's actually loads and loads of oak, very much coconut, loads of vanilla, a lot of richness to the palate, loads of plum, lots of prune. It's also relatively warm, so this is actually throwing me a little bit here because it has all the traits of a Rioja wine as well. So it's a little bit more young and vibrant than wine number 1, but it's got also all the richness of the rich fruit characters together with all the oak. So I'm gonna have to get through these different wines again and see which one of those two, one number 1 and one number 3, may match the Chianti style more. Wine number 2 is definitely more of a Bordeaux style because it feels a little bit more restrained, a little bit more in the restrained French, a little bit austere in style. There's not a lot of oak, but the other two are quite oaky and yeah, difficult. Let's dig again into wine number 1. Okay, yeah, so it's definitely much more evolution to wine number 1. It feels like this wine has evolved. There's a bit of aging, a bit of maturation in here, so it does taste more like it's spent quite a long time in oak. Often, sometimes the Rioja people leave the wine for 1 year, 2 years, so even sometimes longer in the wine barrel, to the point where sometimes you find that the wine, even as soon as it's bottled, well, first, sometimes it's really good to drink straight away, but sometimes it's gone a little too far already in its maturation, in its evolution, which is a good thing because you can buy so often a young Rioja wine and it's going to be ready to drink because it's matured for so long in oak. but sometimes they go a little bit too far and the wine has lost a little bit of its fruity vibrancy, and I'm finding a little bit of this here. Yeah, so wine number 3 has a lot of oak as well. If it's the Chianti, and I suspect it is the Chianti, there is a juicy vibrancy of fruit characters, really like a dark cherry liqueur, which is certainly definitely a signature from the wines made in Chianti. So wines, we haven't talked about the different grape varieties, so well, I guess we have, but a little bit. The Chianti is made from a Sangiovese grape variety. Tuscany, the Chianti area of Tuscany is just between Florence and Siena, and it's a bit on a plateau at a relatively high altitude. I think it's around 400 or 500 meters above sea level, so that'll be 1,000 to 1,500 feet above sea level, so there's a bit of altitude, so a bit of a cool climate, cool limestone terroir as well, which results in really vibrant, slightly tart, vibrant, fruity characters to the wine, and also this juiciness. Sangiovese can be a little bit austere and a little bit edgy in its tannic expression, and there's definitely some of this in this Chianti wine. And even though it does have quite a lot of oak, there's certainly the signature Italian juiciness that makes it so appealing, so satisfying with Italian dishes, because you get the vibrancy of fruit and the tannic tension and the acidic tension all along the palate. All of these 3 wines and European classic wine regions have this characteristic of being all food friendly, but they do go well each with their respective style of cuisine. The Italians go with Italian type of dishes, very flavorsome but fresh produce, fresh ingredients, powerful expressions in the cuisine. The Riojas go fantastically well with richer type of cuisines, like the Spanish love, you know, the grilled meats, the barbecues, the rich stews, you know, like a rich paella with chicken, you know, these rich stews, the rich tapas full of garlic. The Rioja wines go fantastically with these richer type of European foods, lots of fat in the cuisine, lots of richness from the garlic. Well, the Bordeaux wines go a little bit more with the French type of cuisine, so maybe a little bit more gastronomic, a little bit more, I mean, sophisticated. I don't want to, you know, classify the types of cuisines, but the French wines are a little bit more restrained, so they tend to go with a little bit more sophisticated, restrained type of dishes, and you know, they go with the cuisine of the local countries. So here we go. My guess and my order, and I think I've mixed up the glasses here, but my guess is that wine number 1 should be the Rioja. Wine number 2 should be Bordeaux, and wine number 3 should be Chianti. Let's find out if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Let's start with wine number 1, and I really finger crossed that I'm right in here. I have to tell you that, oh, see, okay, I've got it wrong. I have to tell you that I worked in pretty much all these 3 wine regions. I worked in Bordeaux as a winemaker, I worked in Tuscany as a winemaker, and I worked close to Rioja as a winemaker as well. But here you've got it, wine number 1, and see, wine number 1 is actually the Chianti in style. I wasn't sure between wine number 1 and wine number 3 for the Chianti. Wine number 1 is actually, in fact, the Chianti, so feels like it's been matured for long in oak, and that's the style that Antinori has gone here. So this is Villa Antinori Chianti Classico, famous, big, large winery producer, but that generally makes fine, really refined and terroir expressive wine. So this is certainly a good wine. If we go to wine number 2, and I really hope this is a Bordeaux now. It should really be. All right, let's see what we've got. Yeah. So here we've got a Bordeaux Supérieur, Chateau Croix Mouton by a bit of a smaller producer, but a producer that owns quite a few domains and chateaus around Bordeaux that make some really nice expressive wines. And if we go now to wine number 3, well, this is going to be our Rioja. And here we've got it, Marques de Riscal. Marques de Riscal, Reserva 2014. So here you go, fun little exercise. I hope you captured a bit of the different expected styles. That's always the case with blind tastings, and that's the fun part of it really, because you kind of go quite deep into understanding and analyzing the wines, but you can always be surprised by what you are finding. I hope you enjoyed this video. Happy to answer any questions that you may have in the comments, and I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Cheers. Hello, me again. So I turned the camera off because I thought this video was already quite long enough and enough explanations, but then I thought to myself, well, I need to get a little bit deeper and see and analyze what went wrong with my tasting, that I didn't match those wines correctly. So I went back to these two wines, the Rioja and the Chianti, and tasted them again, going a little bit deeper. And at the end of the day, well, maybe it's just me, you know, and everyone doesn't know everything about wines, but these two wines share very, very similar traits. In fact, this Chianti has a lot of oak, which is not always the case with Chianti wines. The Italians tend to age their wines less into barrels and more into large oak vats, which infuse less oaky characters into the wines, generally speaking, while, as we said, the Rioja generally go for oaky, deliberately go for oaky flavors. This Chianti has gone also with quite a lot of oaky expression, which is a way and an expression of more modern expression of the Chianti style. So definitely quite a lot of oak in here, which makes things a little bit confusing, because oak can sort of flatten a bit the differences between the different wines, because it sort of surpasses and sometimes overpowers the genuine natural expression of the grapes. So that's point number 1, I suppose. This Chianti Classico is vintage 2013 as well, while this is vintage 2014, so 1 year older, which corresponds to this more evolved and maturation, more evolved expression that I found in this Chianti. So maybe that's this 1 year of age. Perhaps this wine has evolved a little bit faster as well. It's got 1 year more, but it feels like it's evolved quite a fair bit as well, while this Rioja, against my expectations, 2014, so that it's getting towards a 5-year-old wine now. It's still very fresh and powerful and fruity in its expression, which, you know, I didn't know the vintages of these wines, so I guess that's what kind of threw me. And I'm not making excuses here, I'm just getting back to this wine so you understand a little bit more where they are and what they are. The conclusion, I guess, is that, wow, you can find in these European classic wine regions really similar traits. They're all super food friendly, super dry, smooth, balanced, powerful, spicy, sometimes oaky wines. And I guess that's what we love and like about these European classics, is that they, you know, they offer quite a lot. They offer a bit of a signature European traits, I mean, being quite savory and dry, and they're not about the opulence of the grape variety. They are most generally blends as well, which kind of confuses and mixes things up a little bit, while obviously if you go for more New World, you are going to go with Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrahs and Pinot Noirs, and you are going to be having a really signature style from the grapes. When you are going classic Europeans, well, that's kind of the joy of it as well. They're all blended and it throws things a little bit around always. Anyways, just to say that this is absolutely a fun exercise that I definitely recommend. Some fun and interesting wines here. I think my favorite of all, if I had to pick one, would be this Rioja, because it's got lots of spices, but still also have lots of freshness of fruit character. It still has a long way to go. You can probably age this for another 5, maybe 10 years if you're after evolved bouquets, the aromas of truffles and a bit of leather that will certainly develop. The Chianti Classico, as I was saying, has gone a little bit tiring up already. It's a great wine, it's a fantastic wine to enjoy now, but you definitely want to drink this Villa Antinori 2013 within this year, 2019. Don't go anywhere further than this. The Bordeaux is nice and fresh and crisp, bursting, fruity expression, typical that we love from Bordeaux. This is a Merlot based one, just look it up. It's fresh, it's vibrant. This is again a very fruit friendly wine for subtle, more subtle, elegant type of cuisines. They're both really good. They both to me score around the 90 points mark, maybe a little bit more. I'd happily go on the 91 out of 100 for the Marques de Riscal, Rioja Reserva. Good job, Marques de Riscal, one of the top leading producers in Rioja. And that's really it for me this time. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Santé.